Welcome back. In today's discussion, we'll focus on supply chain, global supply chain procurement and distribution in our series of discussion on supply chain and operations management area. And in this chapter 11, the lecture will focus on procurement and then electronic procurement, distribution, transportation options, as well as the global supply chain issues. And in terms of procurement, it's the purchase of goods and services from suppliers, that is a manufacturing company's undertaking. And cross-enterprise teams typically coordinate processes between a company and its suppliers. On-demand, direct response delivery basically requires the supplier to deliver goods when demanded by the customer. So these are new concepts that are coming in. And continuous replenishment is a concept which supply orders in a short period of time according to predetermined schedule. So for example, if some of you as customers may have scheduled bottled water service, so you may have set it up on a schedule where a 5-liter bottle is delivered to you once a week. That will be equivalent of continuous replenishment based on your consumption pattern. Outsourcing, as we have discussed it in previous lectures as well, sourcing is selection of supplier, outsourcing is purchase of goods and services from an outside supplier, somebody who's outside your company, who's not part of your company. So in this case, typically outsourcing is done so that the company can focus on their core competencies. Core competencies what a company does best. Most efficiently, most cost effectively, where they have a competitive advantage. Single sourcing is a company purchases goods and services from only one or just a few suppliers. So in terms of categories of goods and services, you can think of variety of goods and services that you have. You have original equipment manufacturers, which actually produce goods and services that go directly into production of a product, part, fabrication process. So all the sub-assemblies, materials. So if you think of a car manufacturer, somebody's making tires for them, so that will be an OEM item. For a contractor that's remodeling houses, buying lumber would be example of an OEM product in this case, or buying T-bars or I-bars, which are supporting the frame of a house or a building. In terms of maintenance, repair, and operations, so you have all the items which are not necessarily used in creating the products, but are needed to actually maintain the equipment or do the paperwork or facilitate the production of product or delivery of services. These are all indirect goods. So for example, university buying computers so that faculty can deliver their lectures, that'll be part of MRO. Or if you're buying furniture for an office, that is not being used to produce the product or deliver goods, but it's facilitating so that secretary or office managers could actually try to use that office equipment to do their daily work over there. So the paper needed to print out orders, those are facilitating goods, etc. Janitorial supplies, coffee, delivery, those are all examples of MRO. Various corporate services and service that support the supply chain, whether it's distribution, warehousing, information system, investing in an infrastructure for the trucks that are needed, or IT, website, all those will be examples of corporate services that are needed. So those are a variety of goods and services in this case. E-procurement is direct purchase from suppliers over the internet by using software packages or through e-marketplaces, e-hubs, trading exchanges. Some of you may have heard of Alibaba as a global e-marketplace or trading exchange. Others may have heard of eBay or several other similar electronic places, half.com and so on and so forth. And so e-procurement can streamline and speed up the purchase order and transaction process. You can place order online and that order is sent instantaneously to the supplier, and they can react quickly to that. What companies buy over the internet? Manufacturing inputs, raw material components that go in the production, or MRO, goods and services. Everything can be purchased over that. E-marketplaces or e-hubs are websites where companies and suppliers conduct business-to-business activities. Reverse auction is where suppliers are competing for your business. So for example, Lending Tree is an example of a reverse auction where many potential lenders can compete for a customer's mortgage, potential mortgage. So those are all examples of process used by e-marketplaces for buyer and purchase items. So companies post orders on the internet to suppliers to bid on. In terms of distribution, encompasses all channels, processes, and functions, include warehousing and transportation, that a product passes on its way to final customer. And order fulfillment is the process of ensuring on-time delivery of an order. And logistics is the term for transportation and distribution of goods and services, which is driving force today, these days, on logistics is speed at which you can deliver the product. Particularly important for .com businesses in this case, since the order can be delivered instantaneously. So now the only thing they get measured on is how quickly they deliver the goods. And distribution centers and warehousing. So DCs are some of the largest business facilities in the United States these days. Trend is for more frequent orders in smaller quantities, which necessitates the need for DCs. Flow through facilities and automated material handling, and postponement is a concept of delaying the final assembly and product configuration till the order comes in, so that the right item can be produced for the right customer, and there is very little chance of returns for non-saleable returns. Warehouse management systems. Highly automated system that run day-to-day operations for a distribution center, control item putaways, picking, packing, and shipping. Features transportation management, order management, yard management, labor management, warehousing. These days, even Kaiser Permanente has a state-of-the-art warehouse management system in Oakland, California, where they can actually keep track of all the medical supplies that are needed in the Bay Area and deliver them. Similarly, pharmaceutical deliveries, mail order medications can be delivered. One area is from Livermore, etc. So those are all examples of warehouse management system where advanced computers, programs, and systems can be used to deliver the right supplies to the right destination. So in this case, you can see you have order management, labor management in terms of how making sure warehouse personnel, right amount of people are available to do the work. Optimization of warehouse to placement of items, custom labeling and packaging, and cross-docking, that is incoming shipments directly sent to shipping to other areas without actually going into the warehouse, thereby saving time. And of course, yard management and order tracking is all part of that. Vendor managed inventories. This is manufacturers generate order, not distributors or retailers. Stocking information is accessed using electronic data interchange. First step toward supply chain collaboration, increased speed, reduced error, and improved service. So you can see customers send stock and sale data using EDI, and vendor receives stock and sales data through that EDI process and plans replenishment for customer, create sales order, transfer and order, acknowledgement, which once the create purchase order for purchase order acknowledgement received by EDI, and they can either do the confirmation number and enter the purchase order number and sales order, and then thereby does all the work for the customer in this case. Now, in terms of collaborative logistics and outsourcing, distribution outsourcing, Collaborative planning, forecasting, and replenishment create greater economies of scale. So internet-based exchanges for data and information, significant decrease in inventory levels and cost, and more efficient logistics. Companies focus on core competencies. So you can see the prime reason for logistics outsourcing. You can see in this case, route designation and optimization is one of the reasons which helps reduce, you avoid a capital expenditure, reduce operating cost, increase flexibility, focus on core businesses, improve service, lack of economies of scale in-house, then you, of course, do outsourcing. Acquire talent and avoid labor issues. In all of these, basically, you can see the amount of savings realized in each case. In terms of key attributes, start with insourcing at the earliest possible level, and once outsourcing is needed, you can go to logistics service providers, which focus cost reduction, and then once we are ready for enhanced capabilities and broader service offerings, that's where third-party logistic provider come in, then all the way to lead logistic manager, and then joint operations mode that is used for speed of integration, knowledge transfer. And in this case, transportation options, you have rail, road, which is low value, high density bulk products, typically raw material, intermodal, so basic material like iron ore, metals, wood, all those which actually in terms of value per weight is the least, will be using the most economical because it has to be shipped in huge bulk. So railroad is ideal for that. So it's not as economical as for smaller loads. It is slower, less flexible than trucking. So depending on if you want economical way of per pound basis, a railroad works well. Trucking is the main mode of freight transportation in the United States. Small loads, point-to-point service, it is quite flexible. It's not limited to the train stations for loading and unloading. It can go anywhere. More reliable, less damage than rails, and more expensive than rails for long distance, as it's obvious. Airlines is most expensive and fastest fastest mode of transportation. Lightweight, small packages, less than 500 pounds. High value, perishable and critical goods, and less theft possibility as compared to other modes. Then you have package delivery, which is less than truckload package deliveries. Those are typically like smaller vans within a city, going out within a city just to deliver the packages which came to the warehouse. Small package, fast and reliable, increased with e-business, primary shipping mode for internet companies. And then waterways, ocean shipping, low-cost shipping mode for international global supply chains, primary mean of international shipping. Also even for U.S. waterways, up and down the Mississippi River and among other places. Slowest shipping mode that you have in this case, and the least expensive. Intermodal, combine several modes of shipping: truck, water, rail. Key component is containers in this case. So the same container can be put on a truck, which can be moved onto a ocean shipping, cargo ship, etc. So there are various ways, and also can be put on a train. So that's the intermodal example. Then pipeline, oil transportation and products in liquid form. Oil is one example of that is sent from refinery to various, sent from the actual generation of crude oil and to a refinery, could be going through pipeline. High capital cost, economical use, long life and low operating cost of those in this case. Internet transportation exchanges, and transportation exchanges over the internet can perform a number of functions to improve the efficiency of supply chain and logistics value chains, bring together shipper and carriers, initial contact negotiation auction, play an important role for matching shipping with excess capacity with less than load as a customer, so for smaller truckloads. So example, www.freightquote.com is a good example of that, where you look into various variety of, you have an order, think of variety of carrier options, warehouse management, fleet management database, and then use them all the way to actually deliver the necessary services. Global supply chain, and in this case, we are looking at international trade barriers have fallen, so new trade agreements are being created in today's day and age in this new globalized economy. To compete globally requires an effective supply chain, as has been illustrated. Information technology becomes an enabler for global trade. So think about a life of a DVD player, how supply chain makes the world's gadget. So from Minnesota-based Best Buy decides how many DVD player it wants, orders from Toshiba. So you have Minnesota-based Best Buy placing an order to Toshiba in Japan. Toshiba tells factories for hire in China to crank up production, and that's where that order will go. And in this case, these factories order chips from Zoran, which is going back in California. And Zoran tells its own subcontractors, including TSMC, to get busy making more chips, which is, again, number 5 right here. And TSMC in Taiwan buys factory equipment from Applied Material, which is going back to 6. And in California, Applied Material shops for specialty machine tool services, which is going to 7 in DHH manufacturing, machine tool firm D&H manufacturing at the end of the chain mill, aluminum blacks for Applied Materials. So in this case, you can see exactly how the global supply chain involves a lot of entities throughout the world. Now, in terms of obstacles for global chain transactions, increased documentation for invoices, cargo insurance, letter of credit, ocean bill of lading, or airway bills or inspections, ever-changing regulations that vary from country to country that govern the import and export of goods. Trade group tariffs, duties, and landing costs also play an important role. Limited shipping modes and difference in communication technology and availability play important obstacle in this case. Different business practices as well as language barriers come into play. Government code and reporting requirements vary country by country. Numerous players, including forwarding agents, custom houses, brokers, in financial institutions, insurance providers, multiple transportation carriers, and government agencies. So since 9/11, numerous security regulations and requirements. And in this case, you can see in this framework how companies select their supply chain management strategy, whether it's postponement, delaying the final assembly of goods till after the order is arrived, or speculation, making order for stock, or hedging, risk hedging, having less warehouses and averaging risk, control, share transfer, that is outsourcing and transferring the risk, or security or avoidance of a certain market because of potential security issues. And that will be all moderated by supply chain complexity, depending on how complex is your supply chain and how quickly companies learn in their knowledge base, inter-organizational learning throughout their supply chains. Based on that, you'll have several risk management outcomes as to what the total or per unit cost will arrive at, what the profit will be, what the average inventory you end up having, how many disruptions you end up having, total inbound lead time that you end up realizing, delays to customers, stock out, fill rate. All those numbers will change based on that information. Now, in terms of duties and tariffs, proliferation of trade agreements has happened over the number of years. You can see you have NAFTA, you have European Union, several other trade unions through Asian Association of Southeast Asian Nations, APAC, all of them throughout Mercosur and ATPA in South America. Then you have EAC, etc., Africa, and so on and so forth. So you have a lot of these trade agreements that are coming in. So nations form trading groups, no tariffs or duties within those groups, and they charge uniform tariffs to non-members. So you have these trade agreements allowing for some uniformity within those member countries and different tariffs for that are non-members. So member nations have a competitive advantage within the group. So trade specialists can be used in today's day and age, which take care of duty and tariffs, include freight forwarders, custom house brokers, export packers, and export management and trading companies in this case. Now, another concept that is used a lot is the landed cost in this case. So total cost of producing, storing, and transporting a product to the site and consumption of other port. So value added tax, which is something which is people are familiar in Europe. It's an indirect tax assessed on the increase in value of a good at any stage of production process from raw material to final product. So a type of consumption tax that is placed on product whenever value is added at a stage of production and at a final sale. So the tax that is user paid is the cost of the product less any of the cost of material used in the product that has already been taxed. So what you're doing is just are taxing on the value added, what you're doing. And another concept that is important in this context is the clicker shock, which many times we order products online without realizing how much of the additional cost associated with the online purchase. So this typically occurs when an order is placed with a company that does not have the capability to calculate landed costs. So typically when customers make a purchase from abroad over the internet, they become importers of that good and therefore liable for any shipping, duty, tax, other fees that are applicable. So even the cost that is quoted to them is just the cost that the manufacturer is going to charge, but other costs are not factored in. So often the price of good quoted on the website is no guarantee that this is the total landed cost the customer will end up paying. And the landed cost of a product can often exceed the value of the good, thereby adding frustration in case of customer. So web-based international trade logistics systems. So you have international trade logistic web-based software, including systems reduce obstacles to global trade, convert language and currency, provide information on tariffs, duties, etc., so that the various freight forwarders, custom brokers can do their job efficiently and effectively. Attach appropriate weight measures and unit prices to individual products, incorporate transportation cost and conversion rates, calculate shipping costs online, etc. Recent trend in globalization of US companies. So you see two significant changes: passage of NAFTA and admission of China in WTO. Mexico was included in, became a member of NAFTA, and that brought about cheap labor and relatively short shipping time. And China, with the admission of China in the WTO, offered cheaper labor and longer work week, both lengthy shipping time because of the changes in time zones. And major supply chain have moved to China because as a result of that. And China's increasing role in global supply chain, has become the world's major source of supply, abundance of low wage labor, and world's fastest growing market, the new middle age that is arriving in China, the world's middle income group that is arriving in China. Regulatory changes that have liberalized its market and increase exporting of high technology products. And then increase exporting of high technology products that you notice that in there in case of China. Now in terms of doing business with China, some of the models that are used for companies that are trying to do business with China, they employ local third-party trading agents. That's one approach to get the products made there. Or wholly owned foreign enterprises, so wholly owned subsidiaries, so foreign direct investment. Or develop your own international procurement offices there so that you are able to find the right trading partner by having your presence in that country. Challenges of sourcing from China, getting reliable information is more difficult than it is in US. Information technology is much less advanced and sophisticated than in US. Work turnover rates among low-skilled workers is extremely high as soon as they get an opportunity to get into higher-paying jobs, as it would be in any other country. They're able to take advantage of that opportunity. Now, in terms of global terrorism and global supply chain, after the September 11 attacks, the grounding of planes and closure of borders affected many businesses beyond the New York and DC area. So, for example, Ford shut down 5 plants partly due to lack of supply of Canada. So, in this case, you can see a variety of things that can affect the supply chains. You have disruption in supply, delay or unavailability of material from supplier leading to a shortage of inputs that could paralyze activity of a company, or disruption in transportation. You have the supply available at the supplier, you have the demand from the customer, but there is no transportation options. Delay or unavailability of transportation infrastructure leading to impossibility of to move goods either inbound or outbound. And then disruption at facility, at the manufacturing facility, unavailability of plant, warehouses, and office building, maybe not having enough people to produce a product, hampering ability to continue operation. Or you could have freight breaches in terms of violation of integrity of cargo, they get undermined, cargo theft, etc., leading to loss and adulteration of goods, either due to theft or tampering by criminal purposes, smuggling weapons inside containers, things that have become something to be concerned about since the 9/11 attacks. Disruption in communication, delay or unavailability of information communication infrastructure, either within or outside the company, leading to inability to coordinate operations. So right information is not available. And disruption in demand. So on the customer side, the demand is disrupted. Downstream can lead, disruption downstream from the customer side can lead to loss in demand temporarily or permanently, thus affecting the companies in the supply, in the upstream, in the supplier side. In terms of global terrorism, increased security measures, added time to supply chain schedule resulting in delays and extra supply chain cost. Other costs include new people that need to be added, technologies, equipment, surveillance, communication, security system, training necessary for screening at airports and seaports around the world. So those are all new things that have been added. As a result, inventory levels have increased about 5%. Stricter controls at the borders, more work for customs, longer clearance times. Also, you notice the change in supply and distribution patterns. For example, Emory Worldwide reported a shift towards lower cost mode of transportation to compensate for cost of security, which means cheaper modes of transportation tend to be longer time, which again makes much more disconnect between supply and demand. 24-hour rule for risk screening, extended documentation, and extended time by 3 to 4 days. Who's going to pay for it? One answer had been traditionally let the user pay. If customer demands a product, they have to pay the related security services to deliver that product on time. But security, other school of thought is security is a national issue. Shippers typically contend, and the government should pick up the cost. Does the general public want to pay for security in form of tax or as form of cost of goods? So that becomes a question, and there is no right answer that has been, or clear mandate that has been identified at this point. Both short and long-term effects of supply chain are coming from the government's response. Typically, many of such partnerships have been created. For example, custom trade partnership against terrorism, CPTAT, that has been, and many others have been created. Also, some supply chain issues still remain to be addressed. Efficiency versus redundancy. Efficiency is sacrificed only when risk is very high. Many claim for improving both efficiency and security, but solutions still are lacking in this area. Then issue of collaboration versus secrecy. An increase in collaboration aimed at improving security within both and private and public sectors become an issue. High attention is given to choosing and monitoring partners since they can introduce vulnerabilities. So one has to be careful as to who you select as partners. In the process, are you compromising secrecy in this case? Centralization versus dispersion. Decision driver is the risk perceived. How much do you perceive the risk exists will dictate how much can you delegate the items, whether the vulnerability is linked to more facilities or to transportation. Lowest bidder versus known supplier. So shift is towards going with somebody you know, even if it comes at a price because of security issues, rather than taking the lowest bidder, but then don't know much about the security. The cost of security, both risk and prevention, often balances the savings offered by the lowest bidder. Security versus privacy, and in this case, general shift of attention towards security, even if privacy is at stake. So security has become more important since 9/11 and need to be managed at the regulatory level. Anyway, the trend today is towards higher freedom of public agencies. In private companies, still limited in that area. So that pretty much rounds up our discussion of e-procurement and global supply chain matters. We'll discuss operations management, content, other topics at a later time. See you later.